Good morning, church. Come on, let's stand on our feet. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. We are so thankful for you. Let's sing together. And I was buried beneath my shame. Come on, we sing. Who could carry? Who could carry that kind of weight? We say it was my sin. It was my sin. Till I met you, I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. That's right. It was my sin. Yeah. Till I met you. Come on, we sing this together. When you call my name, then I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day, into glorious day, Jesus. Oh, now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom, now your freedom is all that I know. The old man knew, the old man knew. Jesus, when I met you, when you called my name, then I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Yeah, you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day, into your glorious day. Oh, we worship you, Jesus. Come on, we sing together. I needed rescue. I needed rescue. My sin was heavy. Chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter. I was an orphan. You called me. Come on, let's lift it up a little more. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future. My eyes were open. 'Cause when you called my name, then I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness, is your faithfulness, and I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness, and I will rest in your promises. My confidence
children and their children and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He's with you, he's with you in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming and you're going, and you're weeping, rejoicing. He's for you, 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 he's for May his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming, and you're going, and you're weeping, and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to Christ Church. You can have a seat. My name is Allison, and I'm one of the pastors on staff here, and this is Cassidy, my little girl. And we just want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. We're so glad that you're here today and that you have decided to spend your Sunday, your Mother's Day with us. We're just couldn't be more happy that you're here and a part of this with us. And so I would love just to give you a couple of steps that you can take towards connection today. If it's your first time with us, we want to say just an extra special welcome to you. We hope that you feel connected today. We hope that you feel welcomed. And we hope that this is a really great experience for you. And so what we would love is for you to take a step towards connection with us, okay? So it's really easy to do that. There's a QR code on the program that you were handed when you walked in this morning. There's also one on the seat in front of you. You can take out your phone, scan that. It'll take you straight to our website where you can fill out a connection card. Let us know you're here, and then we would love the opportunity to connect with you. If you're in the room and you're joining us for the first time, there's a really easy step you can take. It's called 10 After. We do it every Sunday after our services. It's just straight down the hall. You take a right into our room called Connection Point, and we would love to spend less than 10 minutes just giving you some really easy steps that you can take towards connection and towards making this just feel like home for you just as quickly as possible. And so we'd love for you to join us for that. And it's Mother's Day. So we want to acknowledge that for not everybody is this a great day. And maybe you have lost your mom. Maybe you had an absent mom. Maybe you wish you were a mom. Maybe your kids just gave you a really hard time this morning and you're not enjoying being a mom today. Whatever you brought in here with you today, we want you to know this is a safe place for you. and that we are a church that is going after the disconnected and the unfulfilled, and that this is a place where you can find a full life in Jesus no matter what you brought in here with you today. And so we're excited to partner with you in that. We are doing something special. We're partnering up with an organization called Skylark, which is a crisis pregnancy center here in town, as well as a sexual health clinic. And they do a really great job of just ministering to our community for those who are in crisis or those who just have questions about sexual health or pregnancy. And so what we would love for you to do is partner with us. Show them your baby bottle. We have these baby bottles out in the lobby. We would love for you to take one, keep that until Father's Day, and then just fill it with your spare change. It's an incredible fundraiser that they do every year that actually funds their clinic. And so if you want to do that with us, we would love for you to do that. Grab one on your way out today. We'll keep reminding you to bring it back by Father's Day, but just fill that thing out, and it's a great opportunity and way for us just to serve our community and partner with a local organization who's doing just such a great job at ministering already in our community. The second thing, and dads, pay attention, okay? This is the best Mother's Day that you can give to your kids, to your wife. It's a week of summer camp, okay, where your kids will be out of your house for a whole week. See, it's the best present. We are hosting a summer camp this summer called Connect Camp. Are you going? Yeah, she's going. No, she's definitely going. It's a week here at summer camp that we are hosting. We're bringing a team into town, and they are actually putting on the camp here on our campus. And so we would love for you to be a part of it. So check out this video really quick of what your kids could experience the week of camp. So listen, your kids are not going to miss this, okay? It's kindergarten through 8th grade, and there are all kinds of things that you can invest in when it comes to your kids. You can invest in them athletically, you can invest in them educationally, but the very best thing that you can do is invest in their spiritual life. And so this is an easy way to do that. There's some information out in the lobby about how you can get connected, and there's a couple of things here. One, if you're a mom, we are giving away a free trip to camp today in this service, okay? So if you're a mom and you have a kid and you want to send your kid to camp, Happy Mother's Day to you. We're going to give a spot away, okay? So on your way out today, stop at the camp desk, fill out the little slip of paper. We'll do the drawing today, and we'll announce that tomorrow, okay? So that's the first thing, is we're giving away a free camp spot. The second is that we want you to partner with us, and there's a couple of ways that you can do that. One is you can make a financial investment and sponsor a kid to go to camp. Obviously, not everybody can afford it, and we don't ever want money to be a reason why a kid cannot experience something that causes them spiritual growth, okay? So our church is footing the bill for a lot of this, but if you want to partner with us with that, we would love for you to do that. So if you go to our website, in the normal way that you give, the normal way that you partner with us through generosity, there's a drop down that says Connect Camp, okay? And so if you're interested in sponsoring a kid to go to camp, you can do that way. Another way is that the staff actually brings an entire group of college kids to town to run the camp. And so if you're interested, or maybe you have some extra rooms in your house, we have to house all these teenagers, okay, these college kids. And so if you're interested in that, we'd love to partner you up with one and put one in your house for the week where you can just kind of minister to them and pour into them as they're getting their education and as they're taking care of our kids, okay? So that's a couple of ways that you can partner with us for camp. But really, we want this to be a way that just serves our community. We want this to be a way where people can experience Jesus and experience our church, and they can do that through summer camp. And so if you have any questions, stop by that table out in the lobby. We'd be glad to answer those for you. Make sure you enter the drawing, okay, and be a part of that with us. And then sign your kids up for camp. It's the best investment that you can make in their spiritual life. And then you want to pray? You going to do it? All right, pray for the moms, okay? And then we'll continue with our service.
Thank you, God. Thank you, moms. And God, thank you for making the moms so we can celebrate them and come to our church. We love them, we celebrate them, and we want to pray for them. Amen.
Amen.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Are we good? Awesome. Yeah, my name's John. Happy Mother's Day. I don't know if we adequately celebrated all the moms, so can we just give it up for moms today and say thank you for thank you for making it possible we could all be here. So yeah. Hey, welcome to those of you who are watching online, or maybe we'll pick this up later. Glad to have you guys with us today. If you've been tracking with us real fast, just to kind of get us up to speed, or maybe you're just kind of jumping in again, maybe you've been away a while, I don't know, and you chose to come back for Mother's Day. Glad that you guys are here today. But we've been going through this teaching of Jesus called the Sermon on the Mount, and we've been here for a couple of months now, honestly, and we're going to be in it for a little bit longer. But it's Jesus' announcement that there's this whole new way of having a life, and he calls it the kingdom of heaven, essentially. And so there's this new way to live with God. There's this new way to live with people, and it's entirely different than anything anybody had ever heard before or could have even possibly come up with. It's just different, and he's saying it's a better way to live. And the great thing about it, and he spent some time at the beginning, was to say the ordinary people like you and I could actually get in on this. And the way that we live in this kingdom is with a heart of righteousness. And so what we've been saying the last few weeks and drilling down on this idea is that there's really two ways that you can try to do that, to live this righteous life. And one way over here is you just do it all right. Like whatever the laws are or whatever the commands are or anything that's maybe been written in the scriptures in the Old Testament, you just do all that the right way at the right time, and you do it in the right way. And you know that it's possible for people to do the right thing and still not be the right person. If you're a parent, okay, if you're a mom, you know this is possible, right? Because you have had a kid who eventually did what it was that you wanted them to do. They followed the rules, right? They actually said yes to you and the thing that you asked them to do. But some of us know that they didn't want to do it, did they? It's the old I'm standing up on, sit down, but I'm standing up on the inside. And we've had to deal with that before, right? That if you weren't going to punish them, that they wouldn't have done it at all, right? And even then, and this is something we need to get up to speed on, if you're not aware about this and you're a parent, even then when kids do things that they don't want to do, but they do the right thing, they may actually go away angry, get together with their friends, and listen, even though they conformed, and again, I'm trying to help you out here as someone who's been through raising 3 teenagers that are now all in their 20s, that they may have conformed, but you're going to end up being the topic of their complaint and plotting and anger when they get together with their friends. That might be new to some of you. But we all know people who did the right thing, but their heart was somewhere else, because it's possible to actually to appear to be good and to follow the rules and yet not actually be a good person. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to actually let God put his righteousness, all the things that are true and good and perfect and right about him, put those inside of your heart, and that's available to people like you and I through faith in Jesus, and then he changes us and he transforms us, and he does this work in our heart on the inside to make us a new person. Last week after one of the services, I said, I'm going to stand back here. It was kind of a difficult day. If you were here, we talked about marriage and divorce and remarriage, and I said, I'm going to stand back here if you want me to pray with you. And someone came back there, and I just love the words. They just said, look, it's happening. I feel it, right? Something's happening. My heart is changing. I thought, man, that was like the best thing I could have heard all week. And it's this amazing thing that when you have this righteousness inside of you, in your heart, that our behavior will follow. So one way is to go, I'm going to do all the right thing, and nothing ever changes inside of you. And the other way is to say, oh, God, change me on the inside. And then as things change inside of me, I start to behave differently. And so we've looked at murder and what lies underneath, which is anger. We looked at adultery, which lies underneath, which is lust. And again, last week we talked about marriage and divorce. What we're going to see today honestly seems a little out of place when you read Jesus' teaching. At first reading, it doesn't even seem to fit in the same zip code as the other things we've talked about, but Jesus seemed to think it's equally important. And it has to do with our words, the power of our words. We're going to talk about honesty and what God values when it comes to the truth. So let's just kind of get warmed up a little bit as we get started today. What might you think is like the biggest lie that you know of? Or you might say, okay, well, this is the most famous lie that you're aware of. Some of us might choose an athlete, right? I mean, he shows up to camp 1 year later and he's added 25 pounds and he's sitting there doing an interview going, I've never taken performance-enhancing drugs. Like you might have something like that where you go, well, that was a really big lie he told, right? Or it might have to do with, I'm going to date myself a little bit here if you're my age. When I think about like performing artists, I think about Milli Vanilli. Anybody else? It's like here's a musical duo, didn't even go by the right names, that recorded records, actually performed live concerts. They lip-synced the whole thing. And then when it didn't work and they were found out, they continued to tour for a whole other year. Like, who are the people that were buying these tickets that didn't even really care? Really great album, by the way. I won an award doing a karaoke. I'll tell you about it sometime. Girl, you know it's true. Come on. It could be a politician, right, who said, well, I did not inhale, or I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And as soon as I started thinking about politicians, like my list was like off the charts. I was, oh no. I tend to always think about a reporter from the New York Times named Jason Blair. I don't know if that name sounds familiar to anybody or not, but Jason Blair resigned back in the year 2003 after confessing that he actually made up stories that he wrote about. He wrote about fictional characters. He actually talked about being in places, geographical locations that don't even exist. And then in the end, they found that he had actually fabricated, like fraud, plagiarism, inaccuracy in 36 out of the 73 stories that he actually wrote for the Times. Now, the fascinating to me about all that is after all this, he wrote a tell-all book like 1 year later, which is a little bit too soon for me, called Memoirs. Not surprisingly, it didn't sell very well, because who would want to sit around and read a book and then after every anecdote and then story go, I wonder if that's true. So it's a good thing that we now have fact checkers, isn't it? Who can comb through speeches and stories and articles and social media posts to help us distinguish between what is true and what is error. And of course, if you're like me, you have a question, which is, well, who fact checks the fact checkers? Anybody? By the way, I don't know if you know this, but I uncovered in the last week that on April the 2nd, we actually have what's called International Fact Checking Day. Did anybody know that? And I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere, I haven't found it yet, on why it comes the day after April Fool's Day. Nevertheless, our struggle with truth-telling seems to start at a really, really early age. Our son Jordan was in preschool when his teacher brought him home from school one day, dropped him off after class, and she came up to the door with him, and she opens, the door's open to her, and she casually asks my wife if it's okay for her to come in and see the new puppies. And we've never owned a dog in our life, okay? And to which my wife says, what? I mean, we don't have any puppies. I don't know what was going on in this kid. I mean, about the same time, I noticed on the back of a leather recliner in our living room that someone had written the name Jordan in pen, which is the kid's name, okay? And when I questioned him about it, he quickly blamed it on his younger sister, who couldn't have been but 3 years old at the time and had no idea how to form letters. But listen, this thing starts early on, doesn't it? And before you let yourselves off the hook, someone came up with what they considered to be some of the most popular lies that we tell. See if any of these ring true. The most popular, they say, is, hey, everything's okay, right? I'm fine. Followed by, you liked a gift that you didn't really like. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to let all the moms off the hook today, okay? This is the day moms should say, it's wonderful, okay? We're going to let you off the hook on that one. You're too busy to do something. You were late because you were stuck in traffic. You're on your way when you haven't actually left. You were late why you were late to work, and something about your age. So while we're still just kind of warming up a little bit, could you for a second imagine, right? Imagine reading something online or not having to wonder if parts of what you were reading were misleading or actually if any of it were true. I mean, could you imagine, right, sitting over breakfast with a friend after his big offshore fishing trip, or cooking out with friends after their vacation to Greece, right, and not having to wonder if that fish really was as big as they were just describing to you, or if they actually indeed did go to a club called the Parthenon. That's a reference to Shaq O'Neal joke, by the way. Your kids, imagine, right, if they cleaned their room and they said that, and so it must have happened. You didn't have to check on them, right? Your employee said, you know what, I finished the project. It's probably my best work ever. And you were like, okay, I believe you, right? Or your spouse or your boss or your neighbor. Could you imagine if they said something and you didn't have to wonder and you didn't have to check? And here's why. Because we all valued the truth so much that we told the truth. And this is what Jesus is about to set forth for us as the way of life in the kingdom of Jesus. And here's the way we pick it up. Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. Again, you have heard that it was said to our ancestors. Hey, everybody's familiar with this, right? Everyone knows the law, all the Old Testament commands. Here it is. You must not break your oath, but you must keep your oaths to the Lord. Now, Jesus chooses a very real specific example from his culture that goes back to the Old Testament court system in which people would take an oath, right? I would take this oath, and it's an oath to God that then became legally binding. And he's going to use this example to cast a much bigger invitation for us to a life of honesty and truth. So this oath, right, this oath to God being legally binding, it'd be like signing a contract today. Like there's consequences as well for breaking that agreement. But let's say you're signing that thing and you are saying to yourself, okay, I swear to God I'm going to pay this land off by 2025. And just speaking that out loud, invoking the name of God, it became legally binding. If you didn't keep your word, the person on the other end could kick you out, they could fine you, they could exercise some kind of a justice. But so Jesus is saying, look, if you make an oath like that, you better keep it, because according to your rules, and we all know the rules, it ends really badly. And Jesus is about to explain to us that they had to take these oaths because, and I think this makes sense for a lot of us today as well, you had to take these oaths because nobody could be trusted. Right? The fact that you have to take an oath in the first place is a good indicator that you were not always honest, isn't it? So that's the old way, right? If you take an oath and you attach God's name to it, you better keep it. And then he goes on, but I tell you, so this is new, don't take an oath at all. And then he gives us 4 scenarios. Don't take an oath either by heaven, because it's God's throne, or by the earth, because it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, because it's the city of the great king. Do not swear by your head, because you cannot make a single hair white or black. So now, vows were encouraged. That's not what Jesus is saying. What's discouraged is not keeping your vows. And Jesus seems to bring a halt to the whole thing. Hey, let's just not do any of this anymore. Because something changed in their culture so that people wanted to walk the line, right? I want to walk the line, not use God's name incorrectly, or people wanted to actually appear to be believable, so they would take these oaths. But in order to make sure that they actually allowed room to not have to deliver on that promise, they chose substitute words instead of God's name. People did this all the time, right? They began swearing on something that was important to give more value or weight to what they were saying. They had told themselves, and this is what Jesus is really getting at, they had told themselves they weren't violating the commands because they actually didn't use God's name. So technically, right, this is what we're all about, technically, they hadn't actually made a valid oath. I mean, I hope that makes sense to you, right? That as long as they weren't attaching God to their words, they weren't breaking the law. They could still then tell themselves, hey, we're righteous people. We didn't actually break the law. We're staying within the lines, so we're therefore good people. It's the ancient version, by the way, of your kids saying, I promise I'll clean my room, but their fingers are crossed behind their back. That's what we're talking about. Swearing by heaven, Jesus says, is still the same as swearing by God, because that's his throne. Swearing by the earth is still the same as swearing by God, because that's his footstool. Right? Swearing by Jerusalem is still the same as swearing by God, because that's his city, right? That's where the kings are, right? And swearing by your head and the hairs is still the same as swearing by God, because all of your hairs, right? White, black, gray, purple. Well, he's in charge of all that too. It's Jesus' way of saying, look, God's king over absolutely everything, so be accountable for what comes out of your mouth. And we've seen this a couple of times in the last several weeks, right, where as a reminder, what comes out of your mouth comes from your heart. And at the core of what Jesus is teaching is just simply the value of honesty and telling the truth. Hey, don't break your word, right? Don't manipulate people with your words. Don't promise something if you don't actually intend to keep it. And Jesus essentially says, just stop it altogether. It's not necessary. Now, some of us have been on the other side of that, and we would love for it to stop. It's just not necessary, is it? Like, we've been on the receiving end of someone who they deceived us. They manipulated us with their words. They told a complete falsehood, right? It was untruthful, and we suffered at the hands of what they were trying to make us believe. And there's this real subtle other thing right here, and let me just take a side road for a minute to get it, because it might be that Jesus is taking a little bit of a jab at religious liars when he starts with talking about swearing by heaven. And I could be wrong, but I think it needs a minute. But it's this really dangerous thing that happens a lot of times for pastors or for churches or for some Christians, where we use the power of Jesus' name to actually manipulate people. And maybe you've heard a phrase like this before: God told me. Or God told me to tell you. Or how about this one? I swear by, and you can say whatever, I swear by heaven itself that you will go to hell today if you don't put something in that offering bucket. Or I swear by heaven itself, or whatever, that you'll be healed if you just send in a donation. And people would hear that, and they would say, well, we don't want to go to hell. We don't want to go to hell. I want to be healed. And so then maybe we just empty our wallets. These are empty promises used to manipulate people and gain leverage. And Jesus goes, I don't like that. Don't speak on God's behalf if you're going to lie. Don't tell people God is speaking to you when it's really just like you heard something, right? Don't tell other people God's speaking to them if he's really just talking to you. We don't do that here. I hate it that that may have happened to you somewhere else. That's not what Jesus wanted to take place. That we are not going to manipulate you and promise something that we don't intend to do as if we're speaking for God. That was just a little side road. I thought it was worth it. Why do we do any of this, though? Like, why do we do it? I mean, why do we have to add extra emphasis to our words and say, you know what, I promise this time, or I swear on my grandmother's grave? Here's what's happening when we do that. And I came across an old sermon this past week by a now deceased German pastor by the name of Helmut Thielicke. And you're just going to have to take a picture of this on the screen. Better yet, if you use the church app, it's in the notes so you can find it there. But it's just so profound. I think he nails it. He says this. He says, whenever I utter the formula, I swear by God, I'm really saying, well, now I'm going to mark off an area of absolute truth and put walls around it to cut it off from the muddy floods of untruthfulness and irresponsibility that ordinarily overruns my speech. In fact, I'm saying even more than this. This is amazing. I am saying that people are expecting me to lie from the start, and just because they're counting on my lying, I have to bring up these big guns of oaths and words of honor. Man, that's deep. Like, that's profound. He's saying the reason a lot of times that we mislead and deceive and actually tell something that's not true, we try to appear different than we really are, is because people already expect us to lie. So now we got to double down and say, oh, this time I'm not going to lie. And just because they're counting on me to, I have to bring up an oath and a word of honor. Now, here's a question, like, could we ever actually really get to the point that what Jesus says next is a reality, where he says this? So why don't we just do this? Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Anybody ever heard that before? Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Any more than this is from the evil one. See, there's this old version of righteousness where I pat myself on the back for not actually violating God's name, and it had entirely dissolved the need for anything close to honesty. Jesus comes along and he raises the bar to say, hey, what if we just said what we mean and then we mean what we say? See, there's this old way where you actually perform your oaths, you make it and you keep it, but if you don't intend to keep it, just change the formula for how you actually say it. Jesus goes, oh, there's this whole new way where we don't need any of that because in my kingdom, right, we value honesty and truth. In other words, if you say it out loud, it should be as good as done, and it can be counted on as being true. Now, if you were to walk out of here today and we pass each other in the lobby and you say, hey, that was a great message, I want to believe that that's what you mean. And when I say back to you, hey, I'm glad you were here today, you want to believe that that's really what I meant, right? See, at the heart of the matter is that in the kingdom of Jesus, we are people of integrity. Hey, we're truthful and we're honest. Yes means yes, no means no. I mean, how refreshing would that be? I mean, how freeing would that be? How amazing. You know, we've really said this every single week that what if we just did the minimum, right? What if we just don't murder people anymore? Wouldn't the world be a better place? Like, what if we stopped committing adultery and sleeping with people that we're not married to? The world would be a better place. And what if we eliminated, like, divorce? And what if we just told the truth? Wouldn't the world be a whole much better place? So you think back to where we were last week talking about marriage, just one application of it. When two people stand in front of each other and we say these vows and they're before God, and I say, hey, do you take her? I do, and we meant it. You take him? I do, and we actually meant it. Do you want to be married to them? Yes. And Jesus finishes with a little bit of an insult, I think, that all of this deception, he says, actually comes from the evil one. Now, I think there could be a lot of reasons for that. I mean, I think about like the serpent's deceit in the Garden of Eden, go way back to the opening pages of the scripture, Genesis 1, 2, and 3, right? Satan comes along, he lies to Adam and Eve, he convinces them to believe something that's not true. He says, look, God's holding out on you, there's something he doesn't want you to know, so if you violate this one command, he won't get mad at you, he's just afraid you're going to know some things he knows, and they believed it, and they did it, and temporarily it got them what they wanted, and it killed them in the long term. And so then they have to try to hide from God. They have to try to cover. They start to deceive one another. And he started it, and you followed it. The evil one, Jesus says, is a liar, right? You can follow this whole train of thought in the book of John chapter 8 where Jesus lays it out. And he goes, look, every time he opens his mouth, he says things that are wrong. He doesn't know how to say anything other than something that's a lie. And then Jesus calls him the father of lies because there's no truth in him. Or maybe he's just talking general and abstract, or maybe, and this is a possibility I just am starting to think about, maybe what Jesus is referring to is that this verbal manipulation that we use on other people is truly an evil thing. And I think it's a lot of this stuff coming together at once. But just think about that for a second, right? That maybe the real sin here is what we're doing to other people and how we're affecting them. Maybe Jesus is really pushing back against using people in a way that manipulates them and confuses their understanding of what's really going on. See, when I try to tell you something that's not true to make you believe something I want you to believe, I've taken the decision out of your hands on what you think is really right and true. I've told you what I want you to believe, so I can paint a picture that makes me look better than I am, and all of a sudden, you don't really know what's going on. So what would happen if we respected people enough to say yes and no and let them decide what's true? See, people in the kingdom of Jesus are so honest, he says, and so truthful, there's no need for us to actually try to convince anyone that we might not be telling the truth. All you have to do is say yes or no. So how do we actually tell the truth in a culture that seems to be built around deception? Like how do we, live as honest people in a world that seems to always be promising things that it doesn't deliver on? Whether that's the media, whether that's a politician. Whenever you see world leaders shake hands, do you believe that? When you open up Facebook or you listen to, music and you get bombarded with advertising and marketing to do this and lose weight or to take this and age more slowly. There's just so many things that are making promises to us. And then we have our own personal deception that's trying to convince people that we're telling the truth. See, we all have these tendencies at times, don't we, to seem sincere or to try to impress or to manipulate people to accept what we're saying. We do this a bunch of different ways, don't we? Just a couple real quickly that I came to mind. We embellish, that's one, right? This is the classic fish story. I caught a fish, how big was it? Well, it was this big, or how big, how big was it? Listen, This happens to everybody. This happens to pastors all the time. 2 weeks ago, I'm in Michigan. I'm with like 30 to 35 other pastors for a couple of days. And then last week, I'm on a phone call with like 50 different pastors, and there's just different groups I'm in. And in every single time when somebody says, how's it going over at the church? Do you know what they're asking? You guys might not know this or not, but how's it going over there? Oh, well, hey, it's great. No. How's it going? Okay, well, I'm tired, I'm frustrated. No, how's it going? Oh, you mean how many people are coming? That's what that question means, by the way. And so when you get a group of pastors sitting around in a circle, here's what happens. The fish gets bigger every time. The attendance grows larger every single time. The girlfriends are more beautiful every single time. We embellish. We're careless. Hey, we're careless as well. And maybe it's not intentional, but did you say it was one or did you say it was two? Because you said it was one, but it's actually really two, and now you don't seem to care. Or have you ever had someone come to you, maybe it's just me, with a complaint saying, a lot of people are saying, who's a lot of people? And it turns out it's just you and your wife. It's actually not a lot of people. Or we use deceit, right? Maybe you saw this one this past week, but a senator in Ohio is on a Zoom call, and he has tried to green screen himself to appear that he's in his home office, but he's actually in the car driving. You can see his seatbelt, and he's constantly doing this way like he's at a stop sign. And the amazing thing about all of that is that he's in a Zoom call discussing a bill that would mandate penalties for distracted drivers. Google it. We do this in our conversations, okay? A doctor named Bella DePaulo, a psychologist at the University of Virginia, actually did some research on all this, and she said that in 1/5, so 20% of all of our social exchanges, if it lasts for at least 10 minutes, it contains untruthfulness and dishonesty. What she observed was that women tend to hide the truth to avoid hurting feelings, and men tend to hide the truth to impress. As a matter of fact, that men will have 8 times as many self-oriented lies as we have lies about other people. So here's the question that we'll land on. Why do I do all this? I mean, why do we do this, right? I mean, there's some easy explanations for why we tend to hide the truth. I mean, avoid punishment, to receive a award that's just not easily attainable. You know what I mean? Like, instead of studying for the test, I can just, cheat on the test. To cover for someone else, to get out of an awkward situation, avoid embarrassment. There's a bunch of reasons why we do this. But it's really the act of lying many times which is more damaging than the things you're lying about. Because lying underneath is the broken connection with each other, right? So there are some deeper reasons why we hide the truth. It might be shame, right? Or to cover something. Hey, I swear I didn't, as a way to try to convince you not to believe what's true because you might not like me. You might not accept me, right? It might be fear. Hey, what if they get angry? What if they take away their love? And some of us do that. Like, this has been our MO for years, right? We just tell half truths. It's the way we get by because we've never felt safe. We actually prefer hiding. There's lots of reasons, but let's get to the deeper questions, and here it is. What's really going on inside of a person that allows them to be dishonest? Like, what's happening on the inside of my heart that I would flat out lie or to shade the truth or to deceive? Like, let's talk about ourselves. What's going on in me that would let me be dishonest and untruthful? And I think that comes from one of two places. One, we're dissatisfied with who we are, or two, we are dissatisfied with what we have. And when I'm dissatisfied with who I am, I tend to try to make myself appear to be someone that I'm not, someone that you'll like. Right? Someone that's more successful, someone that's more whatever you fill in the blank. And when I'm dissatisfied with what I have, I tend to try to make myself appear to be someone who has more or different than I do. So I try to look better than I am, right? Or I have something that will make you accept me or think better of me. And my struggle with truth will always fall along these two lines, who I am and what I have. And when I struggle with ultimately, my real issue is a struggle with God. It's a struggle with God, right? I'm concerned about what people think about me. I'm concerned if God can handle something. And so you think about every lie, every mask, every misrepresentation, every deception, every shading of the truth. I believe you could trace it back to a lack of trust in God. The issue is inside of us, but it's with God, and then it harms and damages all the people around me. Now, I've said this the last couple of weeks, and I definitely think it's true that God's laws, right, God's commands and his ways are there to protect us and to provide for us. I think that's true in this case as well, right? Protect us from people who are dishonest and untruthful, and to provide for us some peace of mind. Hey, to provide us some freedom. And God's commands are there ultimately to tell us something about himself. Namely, that God values honesty because he's trustworthy. That God values truth because he is truth. So what I want to do today is I want to land this in a little bit of a different spot, take a little bit of a turn, just for us to take a moment, to have a couple of minutes just to kind of build our trust in him today, to try to reorient our minds to believe that he is who he says we are. We have what he says we have. And I want to invite all of us who are comfortable, if you're a follower of Jesus, to take communion together today. So you'll find that in the back of the seat in front of you. And I want to kind of direct us this way. You know, Jesus said some of the most difficult parts of the teaching that we've looked at the last couple of weeks. And it's been really tough for me to kind of work through this stuff each week. I know it's been challenging for you as well. And a lot of us have become very aware how far from perfect we really are in the last few weeks. And you might have some of these thoughts going on as we've been journeying through this teaching together. You might be saying, you know what, I don't know if I can keep up with this. I said it to myself a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, man, Jesus, just hit pause for a little bit, will you? Or, you know what, I've already messed up. I don't want to hear anymore. You might be at that point. Let's move on. I just can't take any more Jesus right now. So I just want to hit pause for a minute and remind us that we began this a couple of months ago talking about the kind of people that Jesus invites into this way of life. Right? The people who are down, the people who are out, the people who are standing in the line who are going to be the last to be picked. The people who have nothing to offer. The ones who have no one to impress, and we couldn't do it even if we tried, right? Jesus speaks to all of those people. Those are us people, and he says this, remember, you're blessed. You are blessed. It's not the people we thought were blessed, not the people who appear to have it together. It's the people who know they don't have it together. He says, look, you have the favor of God on your life. It's resting on you in the kingdom of Jesus, and everyone can get in on it. And it happens when you don't measure up, but you trust in and have faith in and believe that Jesus can do this work in us if we allow him to. So maybe you could just relax for the next minute, right? And know that you don't have to prove anything while you're sitting here. That you don't have to deceive anyone to be accepted. That you don't have to be dishonest about what you can actually bring, because you can't bring anything, right? Come to Jesus as you are. We're willing to receive from him. He makes us the kind of people that we need to believe, right? If you believe what Jesus says is true, right? In the kingdom of Jesus, there's no need to deceive or impress each other. There's no need to impress the king of the kingdom because he's already invited us in, right? Our position in the kingdom is secure, is sustained by him and not by what we do or what we have. And it finally hit me this week that I'm starting to understand that what we're getting every single week is a glimpse into the heart of the king. That yes means yes, no means no. He always keeps his word, always. He always has, he always will. If he says that he's going to do it, then he's going to do it. If he says it's going to happen, then it's going to happen. If he says it's true, then it's true. And that means it's true about you. And it's true about what you have. And I think it's corny, but I wrote it down. It's effective. He cannot cross his fingers because they were nailed to the cross. And that's his statement, right? That what he says, he will do. gives us these symbols. You have them in front of you, right? When you peel back the top layer, you'll find the bread. When you peel back the second layer, you'll find the juice, to remember his promises, right? The promises that he keeps his word. And God raised him back from the dead, right? Gave us that kind of power to actually live this life as Jesus is the King of our hearts. So I'm going to invite you to take that together with me this morning. And while we do that, I'm going to pray, and then we're going to worship. Jesus, today we say thank you for just a few moments to hit pause and be reminded of who we are. That we're much loved sons and daughters of a Most High God. God, I hope that we'll just have a minute just to be able to reflect today, to realize that we don't have to impress you. We don't have to trick you into loving us more than you do. We don't have to tell you things that aren't true. You know everything about us, and you still love us. So I hope we'll rest in that in these next few minutes this morning, and we'll say thank you for what you've done for us, that we'll believe what you said is true, because we can look at the cross of Jesus and know that you keep your word. And we're going to pray these things today. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Come on, can we stand up as we worship? As we count this one, he is a faithful God. Father of kindness, you have poured out grace. You brought me out of darkness. You filled me with peace. Giver of mercy, you're my help in time of need. Lord, I can't help but sing. Come on, let's lift this up this morning. Faithful you are. Faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are. All your promises, yes and amen. Come on, we believe that all is promised. All your promises, yes and amen. Yes they are. Oh, yes they are. This is a faithful God. Beautiful Savior, you have brought me near. Pulled me from the ashes, you have broken every curse. Blessed Redeemer, you have set this captive. Lord, I can't help but sing, oh, faithful you are. You're so faithful, faithful forever. Oh, faithful you are. All of your promises, all your promises, yes they are. All your promises, yes and amen. Faithful you are. Faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are. All your promises are yes and amen. All of your promises are yes and amen. We rest in your prophecy, and I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence, that's right, is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness.
real quick before we get out of here, just reminders as you're walking through the lobby, the baby bottles and then Connect Camp stuff if you want to get in on that. And if you're our guest today, thank you so much for spending part of your Mother's Day with us. If you have time, just to give us a few minutes, we'd love the opportunity to meet you down the hallway in Connection Point. Just hear a little bit more about the church. Hey, glad to have you guys today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
I don't need the smoke of mirrors, 'cause I know there's a God who's real. I don't need the lights to fool me, 'cause I have seen the God who heals. I know when I ask I'll receive it, 'cause you're not a God who withholds. I hear you say just